All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? I'm glad everybody's jumping on here. Let me get over here to the comments so I can see who all's in here. Tom's in here. Phil's in here. Good to see you guys on here. So our guest tonight, obviously, is Chad Morgenthaler, and I got my sidekick over here, Jonathan. Jonathan is when we fished the BFLs in the LBL division, we were traveling partners.
Yep.
So it's good to get him over here. I was talking to him last week, and I said you should come by here sometime and jump in on one of these live streams and just chill. And so yeah, we got a hold of each other today, and here he is.
Had the day off, so got to play a little golf today, and fished yesterday. Got burnt all weekend, so
Let's see here.
These 90-degree temperatures are rough.
Yeah. Hey, man, it just got it. So I guess it's pretty hot down there at Tablerock too, right? Is that where you're at right now?
Yeah, I am. I just got home just a little while ago, actually. We've been obviously in Fort Worth for a week and a half, almost 2 weeks, and it is warm here, but the humidity's down. It's very real low today, so it was actually compared to what it was this morning coming out of Fort Worth. Goodness gracious! I stepped out of the camper this morning to hook everything up, and I immediately was a ball of sweat. I'm like, oh, this ain't real fun. So, but I got home and stepped out, and it was warm. It was probably 80, 88, 89, but low humidity, so it felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Friday I was out in it, and it was like 80% humidity, not a stitch of wind, and 92. It was miserable around here on Friday. So
it's tough. Yeah. It's tough this time of year. So we got Cody Arnold in here. What's up, Cody? Cody is actually the guy I stayed with on Truman this week. I fished a BFL on Truman, and we stayed in a travel trailer. He's got a 31 footer, and man, it was sweet. I hadn't done that very much, but after the tournament, we got back to the campground, and I just sat down, and I just didn't want to get up. I think like 4 hours later, I finally got up. You could see the lake there, and we were just chilling. It was awesome. Perfect. It was grilled some hamburgers and some hot dogs, and had a blast.
We've camped for years, me and Debbie, traveling all over the nation, and for about 12 years, we had 3 or 4 different fifth wheels, anywhere from a 35 to a 40 footer. And we actually just bought one about 3 weeks ago. When I was at Neely Henry, we bought another one, and we took it with us to Fort Worth. And it's just so nice. We had a room there at the Omnia Fort Worth Hotel that Bass provided for us whenever the event started. And we had our fifth wheel at a state park facility that was literally 2 minutes from the ramp. We was backed up to the lake, and I'd have loved to stay there the whole time. Now that distance from where we weighed in to the launch site was 60 miles, and it's not bad. It's all interstate. However, Fort Worth traffic is horrendous, and they had a big race going on at Texas Motor Speedway, which was halfway in between, right off of 35 to west, which was the direct route that we had to take every time. And I mean, you got within, it's just a nightmare. I mean, it would take anywhere from an hour and 30 minutes to 2 hours and 45 minutes to get there one way. And then, of course, what I would do was, I would go to the weigh-in or to the festivities. So it's kind of weird how the Classic is facilitated. We can go over that now, or we can go over it a little bit later if anybody's interested in it. I can go over what all they walk you through and how it goes down. So whenever or whatever, if anybody's interested in that, I'll be glad to go over it with you. If not, it's just it's a little bit, it's long days basically at the end of the story. It's just a lot of really 14, 16 hour days for that entire week and a half, and it's a grind.
Yeah, I definitely want to dive into that for sure here in just a minute. Sure. Cody's got a question here. He says, Chad, do you still have the slide-in pickup camper? He said, I was just telling Gabe this weekend how that slide-in is a great setup to get the tournaments with your boat.
So I do not have it. Actually, I just sold it, and I sold it to James Watson, who I think you just had on the show here, right? So just last week or something like that, just recently.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
So I've had 3 different truck sliding campers. I had one for a short bed that didn't have any slides in it. Now it was really nice because it was lightweight, real portable, real easy to set up. And for one person that you're not going to spend more than 3-4 days a week at a time in, it's perfect. It was low cost. It was low maintenance. There's little that can go wrong with it. And I loved it. I mean, I really did. But it was small, as you can imagine. Then, so Debbie decided she wanted to travel with me some. So I stepped it up to a Lance 1172. They kind of gave us Elite Series guys a little bit of a deal on one. And so I bought it directly from the manufacturer, and but I had to have a dually to do it. And that thing was the Mac Daddy, dude. That was like, it had 2 slides in it. So the slide came out the back and the whole side slid out, and it was huge. But it was heavy. My God, that thing weighed 5,000 pounds dry. And so whenever I loaded it with all my tackle and everything else, you know, it was 6,000-7,000 pounds, and you knew it was there even on the back of a 1-ton. And I used that for about 2 years. I sold it, and then I sold it when COVID hit is actually whenever I sold it. And then I got a used one from a friend who's a dealer of mine just down the road here in Mountain Home. And I bought a used one that he had, or I didn't actually buy it at the time. I just used, he said, come get mine, use it whenever the season started back up. And it was an 1181. I really liked it as well, but it was another big one. It weighed 4,000 pounds dry. And then just here recently, I sold it to James, and I bought my 5th wheel because Debbie decided she wanted to travel with me all the time, which that's a good deal. I mean, we love 5th wheels. The one we got now is like 36 foot. It's a Grand Design Reflection, and we really like them. But you know, there's issues that come with that. You have to have not only that same truck to pull that camper with, which it does good, and I've got a lot more room for extended stays, which we're getting to where we're out 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time now. So, and she wanted to travel with me all the time, but then I had to buy another truck because she pulls the boat for me, so I can't all in one. Sliding camper is definitely a deal for one guy or a couple that has short term, and I loved it. I probably will have another one at some point in time.
Nothing like sleeping in your own bed, right?
Dude, it is. You know, you got to replace the mattresses on them because it's like sleeping on a concrete board, the ones that come from the factory. Actually, I think concrete board would be more comfortable. So you have that, but you have all your tackle storage, you know, in there. You have your clothes. You can cook your own meals. Debbie pre-plants a lot of meals for me, so I have them all frozen in the refrigerator or the freezer there. So I don't have to cook at night whenever, you know, you get in after you've been out there 12, 14 hours and you're exhausted. It's thawed out. You throw it in the microwave and you're good to go. And you have your own bathroom and your own bed. And the campgrounds are so safe, and they're usually so well located to take off. Dude, I mean, you just miss the whole. You don't have to worry about your parking place being stolen and all that crap. I mean, it's. We've been doing it for years. I just can't hardly stand to stay in a hotel anymore.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, we stayed at Longshore, and we were literally 2 minutes from the boat ramp, you know, just to drive over. I fished as a co-angler. We fished as co-angler. So we just got in the truck in the morning. It was so nice to not have to get up real super early and make a long drive. You know, 2 minutes is no big deal. And I mean, we pretty much could have walked there if we wanted to.
Beats the heck of get up in the morning and driving from here. Like
yeah, we've
last time.
Yeah, we've just jackpotted some Kentucky Lake derbies, and we just leave the house. It's about a 2 hour and 15-minute drive. We just get up at like 3 in the morning and
makes for a long day.
It's a long day. Yeah, the way the drive home is kind of brutal.
Yeah,
but
especially if you eat something fast food right before you leave and it settles down and you pass out about halfway home.
But we saved $80.
Yeah, we saved $80.
Yeah, so
I get it. You know, and it is. You can imagine with us being out, you know, 9 regular season events, and then, you know, the classic and everything else. You're out a lot of expenses, and even if you VRBO it or hotel it or really watch what you're doing. You're still out all that extra expense for food. I mean, it's just an additional cost, and then you have nothing at the end of it. So that's why if you can swing it, we've enjoyed doing it. It's just a little bit more peace of mind, and over, it's been 18 seasons for me. I mean, that's a lot of money. Those guys spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars renting houses and in motel rooms at $100+ a night.
I know you see a lot of the guys on the Elite Series doing that. Is there quite a few guys that do camp, or is it about 50-50?
I'd say about 40 to 50% of the guys on the Elite Series camp. We really do, and the other 50%, they probably out of the last 50%, probably 30% VRBO it and rent houses, and they bunk up together, and then the other 20% either hotel it or cabins or something of that nature.
Yeah, I noticed when we got back to the camper after the tournament, and I was just sitting there, I was just thinking, I had this thought several times that I would so much rather be sitting right here than sitting in a motel room. It was such a nice, it made the experience way, way better. We didn't have TV, so I wasn't distracted by TV. Had one bar on my phone, so I couldn't really do any social media stuff. I couldn't check my YouTube channel or any of that. So I've kind of forced myself to just kind of relax and soak it in. And, that thought entered my mind like multiple times. This is way better than being stuck in a motel room. So, that's another kind of issue. Every once in a while you roll up on some campgrounds that doesn't have self-service very well, and for us, we have to social media post, or really need to every evening. And with Debbie, she works remotely, so during the day, she works for a wealth management agency, and she needs our Wi-Fi to have a fairly good signal to be able to get into their portals and everything else. And so that can be challenging. Every once in a while I'll throw her a curveball, but for the most part we hit it. Now on this northern swing, we know when we go to Waddington, we bounce back and forth. We've got terrible signals, and we bounce back and forth between Canada and the U.S. and that creates some issues. But for the most part, it's still way more peaceful, way more peaceful. Yeah, there was an AT&T tower about 5 miles from where we were staying, and we pulled out. We were leaving to go do the Zoom meeting. We were trying to find a signal, and we turned towards Warsaw. And right as we're turning, going up the hill, you can see this big, huge cell phone tower breaking, through the canopies of the trees, and we're like, we're going that way, and we went that way. And then there was a electrical grid parking lot place with a little gravel lot, and right across the street is that cell phone tower. So we whipped in there, and I had like 4 bars instantly. So nice. I knew where to go if we needed a good signal.
It's like the old days of staying at Montauk at the campground, trying to find that signal on top of the hill, drive down the hill, and slam on the brakes.
Yeah, climb up a tree, stand on one leg, and hold your hand there for a while.
We got to the Omni in Fort Worth, and she goes, "Holy shit, we've got 5G here." And I'm like, "What's that? What is that?
Can we make a call on 5G? Is that something special?" Or
you can make a call before it makes the call if you think about somebody. Is what it is. It's so fast.
Chad, you talk about staying in those campgrounds. I know when we stay in those hotels for the BFLs, I'm just glad we don't have a boat, to be honest with you. Some of those places are sketchy.
Yeah. You think?
Well,
yeah.
Well, and as fishermen, we like to stay on the cheap. I mean, I'll stay pretty much anywhere. I'll fight the roaches off. I don't care. Right. I'm just trying to get a night's sleep. But
you were staying with me. Were you with me when we stayed with Robert down there? And there was mice in the hotel.
Oh yeah, we watched mice run across.
I had a mouse run across my chest while I was sleeping on my back at night. Nice. And there was a story that he told. He said they were staying in that same hotel, and they bought some peanut butter cheese crackers or whatever, just the little Lance crackers or whatever in a brown paper bag, laid them on the table. And the morning before they left to take off to start the tournament, they just grabbed that paper bag and threw it in the glove box in their boat. And later on in the day, they heard some noise moving around in that glove box, and there was a mouse that had crawled in that brown paper bag, and they had a mouse in the boat. So that's the same hotel.
Well, that hotel, I remember that hotel. It's down there. I don't remember what it's called, but it had to be built in like the 60s when fishing rods. The longest fishing rod you could buy was 6'6".
Is a 2-piece 5'6".
Yeah, 2-piece 5'6". Because we got in the room with our rods that night, and we went to lean them against the wall, and a 7-foot rod wouldn't. It was touching the ceiling.
Yeah,
at a good angle.
Well, you're 6'3", maybe
6'2",
and I'm 6'1", and I was nervous the whole time I was going to hit my head on the ceiling.
There was one little corner in the back that it kind of dropped down and you could set your rods up. But it was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
$7
tonight,
I think so. It was cheap.
A good deal. I got a question on here from, let's see, let me scroll back up here. I see Ron down there in the queue. We'll bring Ron in here in just a second, maybe after we shoot this question out there to you. He said this is for Chad. He says he knows 3 people who roll the bills of their hats: Chad, Bob, and Larry. Who started it? Did you influence Bob, or was it Larry?
I'm not sure the Bob and the Larry that you're talking about. I don't know. Whoever's older, but I've been rolling the bill of my hats like this forever. I am not a flat broomer. I can't do it. They don't feel right. It's just wrong. I mean, I'm Southern Illinois redneck to the bone. Always have been, always will be. And it was funny. We actually made a kind of a joke about this whenever I was at, I think it was the Pittsburgh Classic back in 2006, I believe it was. And it was called the Morgenthaler Bender, and I gave Trip one of my hats because I had molded the bill on it, and it was hilarious. Clay Dyer, a couple of years later, told me, he said, "Man, I started wearing my hat like this because of you." I started laughing. I'm like, "Oh my God, I hope I don't go down in history because of the guy who wears the rounded bill hats, the molded bill." But
so how do you perfect that?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah, I mean,
hours.
That's top secret stuff. I can't just give
sweat equity, right?
Yeah. The sad part about it is about the time it really gets righteous, it's time to throw that hat away because it smells horrendous. You can't.
I bet it's waterproof too.
It's got so much water.
Yeah. Well, it is, and it is about watershed. You think about. I mean, obviously, I should have been an engineer because I had. All this. It's just natural to me to wear it like this, and it sheds water naturally. It's all good.
That's right.
Well, my buddy Mike Russell from Bag 5 Baits, he actually paints a lot of the Strike King baits. We've had some deep discussions about hats. In fact, the last bet we had, he wanted to bet my lid against his lid, and we decided on just a $1 bet because I wasn't about to take his lid, I guess you'd say, or have him take my lid, how it worked out. But he was talking about how there was one time he lost a bet, and he had to give up his lid. And he lost his mojo for like 3 months. He could not catch a fish. He couldn't put a limit in the boat in a tournament. And he was talking about, if you think about it, all the time you've been out in the water with that hat on, all the decisions you've made, all the fishes you've caught, all the baits just all the insight you've had out on the water, all that has been kept right here in this little hat. So it's like it's part of your brain almost. And he said, when I lost that hat, he said, I swear I couldn't catch a fish for like 3 months. And he finally started wearing his new hat, and after going out, he got his mojo back, and that hat, it learned everything that it needed to learn.
No, there's no doubt there's mojo within a hat. I've actually got the same hat that I wear in every tour event and the classics for the last 2.5 years. The same hat, and I've never washed it. My wife will not let me bring it into the house. It stays in the boat, but it's faded. It's got sweat lines on it. It looks horrible. And actually, I wore it during the classic during the day, but I changed hats in the truck on the way to the weigh-in, and that's probably what really got me because it knew I was unfaithful. And I do. I'm hat superstitious beyond superstitious, and I try different ones. And there's certain ones that I've got that even in practice that don't work out, and like they're history. I'm not dealing with that deal. I mean, if they get 1 or 2 days, and if they don't produce, it's out. Fact.
No, I fully understand. Yeah, life's short, man. You don't have to you don't have time to mess around with that.
I only get 3 official days of practice, so I can't be jacking around too terribly long because I'm too stupid to find them that fast. And so I gotta have everything working in my favor. It's funny how you develop those little things along the way, but like I will not wear red underwear I was a little bit superstitious about the red Jasper logo for a while, but it seems to have worked out. So, it's a weird deal. And if somebody shows up with a banana or peanuts in my boat, they are not getting in until that thing is in the trash. Yeah. It's not coming in. No more. No peanuts. No. That was John Boy and Billy when I was on the John Boy and Billy. John Boy, he was superstitious about peanuts on his saltwater boat, and he thought he would like die in a hurricane or some type of a perfect storm if somebody put peanuts in his boat. It's hilarious. Those guys were that was a hoot. Now I'm telling you.
Oh, wow! I've never heard the peanut one. That's a new one. I've heard the banana one, and I wonder where it started. Any idea?
I don't know.
You always eat it before we take off.
Yeah.
The funny thing
is, bring the boat.
Clint Davis about a week ago told me we were talking and we were just shooting the shit back and forth. And he goes, I said, what do you think about it, Clint? He goes, you don't want to hear what I think about it. He said, I'm not fishing very well this year. He said, no, I don't have a clue why. And I looked down and there was a whole great big jar of peanuts that he'd been carrying around all year with him in his boat. I'm like, I know why you ain't fishing very well.
Oh, yeah.
It is. It's a fact.
Mm-hmm. So we got hats, bananas, and peanuts. What other superstitions do you have?
Red underwear.
Red underwear.
Yeah, there's some of them. There's a couple of them I can't talk to you about.
Maybe the next live stream we'll get into that.
Is this like late night live stream that we got to get into that one?
Anyway, there's just a few of them, and it's weird. It is. It's weird, but it seems to all line up. I'm telling you, it's not coincidence. But those are the three main ones.
Let's get Ron in here. Maybe Ron knows where the banana superstition has came from. Ron, any idea where the old banana thing came from?
I have no idea, but I'm with you on that. I don't have a banana in the boat. I didn't know the peanut thing, but I've been sitting backstage. I've been working on my hat.
Oh yeah, it's looking good.
You're getting there.
All right.
You are
getting there.
Yeah. Oh, you're doing good. Takes a little while though. It won't stay right out of the gate. I don't know what the deal is with that. I mean, you can bend it before you put it on, and then you just got to keep doing it. So it's more of a binocular thing.
Binoculars.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go.
And you're bad you're bad to the bone when you get that going on.
Mm-hmm. I'll stand out in Minnesota with that.
You probably have to get sweat in there real good and keep working it in there, and eventually it'll soften up.
You got a ways to go on yours there, Gabe.
Yeah.
This is the first time I wore this hat. I just got it in the mail. I got that flat bill thing going, I guess. It won't last long.
Yeah.
It won't last long.
See, I buy the same hat every year, and I wear it all year.
Do you?
And then it wears out, and like Chad said, it stinks, it's nasty, it's dirty, and then I put a new one on. But I buy the same hat because it fits well.
Yeah,
that's cute.
They're not any good till they start to stink, though.
You're right, but when they fit just right,
when it's got that dark spot, from doing this right here, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
right there. That's when it's broke in. When you got that.
See, my problem is I buy the fitted hat, and so the elastic band stretches out.
You got a big head.
I got a big head, and that band stretches out, and then you're going down the lake, and they just always fly off, and I hate that. So,
man, it's a tough world we live in.
I'm telling you.
All these problems that we have.
I'm kidding. Let's see what other kind of questions we got coming in here. So here's a little bit on that hat thing. He says he's asking because his Phoenix hat in his interview on Bassmasters the other day, that bill was rolled up tight. So that's where that question came from.
Yeah, the more stressed out I am, the tighter the bill gets. It's just a fact. Obviously, I didn't catch him very well in the Classic, so it was pretty tight. That might be.
Is that your nervous twitch?
Yeah, it probably is, and I haven't recognized it or identified it to this point. But yeah, it is. But that was the other hat. That was my baby. It was broke in. I don't even have to mess with it anymore. But yeah, I tell you, the stress, the amount of stress that is produced by that tournament alone, and it's weird because you go into a Bassmaster Classic and you got 54 guys there, and you're like, man, I only got to beat 53 of these dudes, and you feel like you hope that you don't even have 53 to beat, But it's just one of those things where you just a tremendous amount of stress that you're normally able to fight off throughout the year. We've all been through it. You get into those modes like your time's running out. I'm really bad about being time sensitive. Matter of fact, I'm so weird about it that there's a lot of times that if I'm fishing shallow, I don't have either one of our front units on because they have time displayed on them, and I don't want to know how much time I've got left. It just pushes me. It makes me go too fast, and I skip stuff, and I'm bad about covering. So I had one of my marshals in the Classic ask me. He's like, "What do you, in your opinion, is the biggest mistake that the average angler makes?" While he's fishing. I'm like, well, that's kind of a hard question to answer. But, I said, the thing that I see with most of the elite guys that I know and that I hang around, and myself included in that bunch, versus, the guys that don't get the opportunity to put that much time on the water as we do, is they just don't move as much, and they don't rely on, I don't have to have had practiced here. I don't have to have rolled through here and had 3 or 4 bites in this area. It's showing me that it has potential right now. I'm fishing the times and the current conditions to the best of my ability to the minute. And, that works for and against you. So when you're rolling that fast, I think that everybody that watched the Classic coverage could see Steve Kennedy. Steve Kennedy is a good friend of mine, and Steve is on a different level of mental thinking. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Steve's just a unique individual. He's on a parallel with Aaron Martin's, okay? And some of those guys, there's a few of those guys out there on tour that do that. And by that, what I mean is they look at things that I'm not even capable, or they're thinking of things that I'm not even capable of, and they're moving at speeds that's beyond what we move at. And so, I answered the question. I say, just moving and believing in what you're doing, having confidence, like, hey, I don't have to have rolled through here in practice. I fish a ton of new water every event because maybe I've just rode through it. Maybe I haven't even seen it, but at that particular time, it's like, hey, this kind of looks similar to what's going on right now. I'm going to roll through here. I'm going to spend 10 minutes. Whereas an angler that maybe doesn't do it as often would roll in there and would spend 2 or 3 hours trying to fish it. And I'm going to spend 10 minutes trying to fish it. And like somebody like Steve Kennedy would spend half of that time trying to fish it, if that makes sense. And it's just, it's looking for that real quick clue. Now, granted, on the flip side of that coin is as soon as you get that clue, we kind of have the ability to throw the brakes on. It's like, hey, now it's time to make the most of this. If you've ever been around Greg Hackney and watched him fish, dude, like, he is the most methodical guy and slow in delivery on his pitches and how he works the bait. And it's impressive to me. But when he moves instantly. It's like, I'm done with it. This is over. I'm now here. And I'm in this, I'm now in this universe. I'm no longer, this is done. And I fell into a trap with him at Knoxville on the Tennessee River this year. And we were running some of the same stuff. And there was 3 or 4 moves that I made, and I made 10 moves to his 3. Now, he finished the event way better than I did. But Greg is so thorough. And I actually said something to him about it. I was like, Greg, I pulled into that pocket knowing that I needed to fish in there. I said, and you were in there and you were fishing. It was a small pocket deal. And I was like, you were fishing so thorough and so slow at that time. He goes, well, I thought there was only maybe 1 fish in there and I was going to catch him. And that's Greg's mentality. Me or Steve Kennedy, there has to be 100 of them in there, and we're going to catch 25 of them and move on to the next one that's got 50 in it. That's just, it's really interesting to see how different anglers approach that. But back to the original question, the stress develops whenever that don't work out, and you start then, even no matter how many hours you've got on the lake, you start questioning yourself. Man, did I make the right move? Did I meet a lot of, did I leave a lot of fish behind me? And I'll be honest with you, I can't tell you how many times I've gone back at the end of the tournament day, Pickwick, perfect example from this year. Went back to the camper at the end of the night, and I was talking to my wife, Debbie, and I was like, it's just like it hits you like a freight train. I'm like, man, I'm all over the right stuff, and I just fished them wrong. And I know I fished them wrong. And go back the next day and retrace your steps and blister them because you was just a little bit off. You was a little bit fast. You was a little bit too shallow, or you was a little bit too deep, and you make that adjustment. And but the ability to recognize that and then go back with 100% confidence and blister them the next day is and that boils down to one thing. That boils down to time on the water and confidence in what you're doing. And so that's what I told my marshal, that's how I answered that question. And it, it's nothing more than time on the water. And you can't substitute for that. There is no substitute. I mean, an elite series guy or an angler, a professional angler that is trying to pursue this, we have 10 times more bad days than most anglers have, but we learn from them or try our best, and don't make those mistakes again. And, it's like, man, when this condition rolls up, well, you got to realize the magnitude of conditions roll up time and time and time again. Whenever you're on the water 250 days a year, you see this and you're in different areas of the nation. So you apply all of that knowledge and all that experience, I should say, not knowledge, but all that experience that you've had, good, bad, and indifferent, in ways that hopefully you can benefit you from. The problem is that you're also competing against all those other anglers, whether it's in the Bassmaster Classic or it's on an Elite Series event, where, man, those guys are going through the same thing. They've all been through there, and there's a lot of really, really talented anglers and really smart guys on that, way smarter than me. I promise you that. And as you guys probably will know. So anyway, didn't mean to get off on a tangent there, but just kind of give you an in-depth look of how it all goes down for us. And we don't have a problem with saying, hey, I know I left 10 fish here, but I caught 5, and I caught what I felt like was the biggest 5 in here. So in those situations don't roll up every day, and you make mistakes and you skip over them. I know I probably rode through the area that Hank Cherry won the Classic at. Now, it could be a timing issue. I maybe wasn't in there at the right time. And I know there was an early morning bite. And, when you have an early morning bite or a shad spawn or a mayfly hatch going on like that, where you've got to capitalize on it, and you've got a limited amount of time to do that, and you've only got 3 days of practice, you have to pick your poison, and it may roll up to where you find that spot. It may roll up where you never even come close to it, if that makes sense.
It does, man. Real quick, Frankie was on our live stream a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about fishing tournaments, getting into tournaments as a co-angler, and we kind of talked about maybe getting involved in a bass club. So he's since
You're just starting.
Yeah, he's since fished a few tournaments as a co-angler in a bass club, and now he's thinking about jumping in a BFL. So that's good to hear. Cody says he says he's going to be back down in the old 86 campground on Tablerock for about 8 days in August. Going to do a ton of fishing. So we'll actually, after we talk about the Classic a little more, maybe we'll get into some Tablerock stuff. So I wanted to ask you, kind of piggybacking real quick on that same topic you were talking about. For me, one of the toughest things to do is go through an area and say you're flipping a jig or a Texas rig, you're not getting bit. Do you vacate the area, or will you go through with another presentation, say like a moving bait, a chatterbait, spinnerbait, crankbait, or it's hard to figure out if that area just isn't holding fish. Are they not biting, or are you just throwing the wrong bait to trigger that bite? How do you make that adjustment?
And that's a great question. And actually, I had another one of my marshals address that same thing in the Classic. So it all depends on what your situation is and what the conditions are. So if you have 2 guys in the boat, that's a great scenario, because you got one guy can throw moving baits and cover structure and all this, And then you've got another guy who maybe can pick stuff apart. And so hopefully you can put the pieces of the puzzle together real quickly like that. That's best case scenario. Now, in individual tournaments like what we fish, where we don't have co-anglers, you just have to pick your poison. But there is, you'll see, so we all have our go-to baits and our go-to preferred way of catching them. All of us do. But it's hard to, so let me kind of back up just a little bit. Anglers get labeled a little bit. So you take guys like Van Dam, who is known as he's obviously a crankbait dude. You can watch him on the water. He can't stand still. He is not a flipper, a pitcher, and he moves. So when that bite exists, but he's so efficient at so many different things, he can flip and pitch. And I've been in the boat with him several times. He's as good as anybody with a jig in his hand as I've been in the boat with. However, he's known as spinnerbait, topwater, crankbait, jerkbait guy. But all of the guys at that level can do a pretty efficient job at every bait, and that's why we have a lot of different baits laying out on the deck at the same time, and you just rotate through. And that's what I do. I rotate through as quickly as I can. I'll give it a little bit of a time limit. I'll throw a swim jig for 5 minutes and see if that generates any interest, and then I'll flip for 10-15 minutes, and then I'll throw a topwater or a frog or this or that. But really what it boils down to is when you get really dialed in on fishing in general and their patterns and the conditions that you're fishing. So whatever it is that you roll up into, there is a tool for that job that is going to perform better than others, and you just learn what that is. So for instance, you get around millful mats, that you are more than likely going to be either fishing a frog topwater on top of it, or you're going to be punching it. And those are going to be your two efficiency baits. And then, you get around other situations where you got a wind-blown rip-rop bank, you're going to be, cranking it, spinnerbait, or jerking it. And, so you just lean to those baits. So you weed out all the other possibilities real quick. You're not going to throw a shaky head on the dam. You're not going to throw typically. And that's not to say that you can't get a bite or catch a fish on any of that, because you certainly can.
There's so many variables, man. It's hard to eliminate anything really.
You can catch a fish on a turd if you could keep it on the hook. That's a fact. And so, and the minute that you say, oh, this is not the right deal, somebody's going to clean your clock at weigh-in with doing something completely off the wall, which sometimes that happens. But for the most part, day in, day out, the right tool for the job, for that condition, for those situations that roll up that you're in for that particular moment. The sun's high. Okay, now this and the flipping and tied to cover. Now the cloud cover's rolled in. I got a little bit of wind. 5 minutes later, I'm going to throw a swim jig. I might throw a frog. I might throw a spook. And that's how we roll through. And we just roll through it really, really quickly. And just and realize the fact that, look, I know there's a really good possibility that I'm fishing overfish, but I'm putting all of my eggs in the basket that has the highest percentage, and that's what we do. And there's a reason I have a boat of tackle. There's a reason that a lot of the Elite Series pros have $9,000 worth of tackle in their boat at any given time. It's just because you try to use it all. And man, I kick myself in the butt so many times going, gosh, dang it, man, I know I'm missing something. And I kept telling myself that in this classic the entire time. I'm like, I know it's 4 feet high. I know I'm in the mid 70s. I know a lot of these fish are scattered out. I know some of them's going to be caught flipping. It's probably going to be one shallow, and that's how I want to fish this tournament, but I don't want to miss something. And I'd pull out and I'd fish that intermediate range, and then with the swim bait, and then I'd crank, and and you just try. It's just process of elimination, and you just try to dial in the best you can, the fast you can for the highest percentage, and you go with it and you live with the results. Especially whenever you don't have any history on that lake, or you're limited on practice.
You know, Chad, you talked about it's probably the loaded question of the night, but as amateur anglers, you talked about turning the brakes on in practice and knowing when to leave that area, vacate it, and go somewhere else. What is that? I mean, what's that moment that says it's not right, let's move on to something else?
You know, that's a great question, and it's a gut feeling is how I would answer that. It's that man, I've been here
250 days in the water a year makes a big difference.
I've been here 1,000 times. This ain't going down, or I'm not feeling it. And we all make that judgment call, and it's wrong sometimes, you know, and you find out later that, hey, I was there a half hour too early or a half hour too late, or I left too quick. You know, all of us make that mistake. And man,
you just got to be okay with that judgment call.
It's that gut feeling, and you can't teach that. And actually, and not that I'm a gigantic fan, but David Dudley said it best. You can't teach that instinct. You can't teach it. And there's just some guys that naturally have it better than others. It's just a fact. It's like guys that kill great big deer more so than other guys. I mean, they put the time and the effort in. Yeah, that's part of it, but they just have that unique ability to know more so than the other guy. Hey, it's time for me to leave, or it's time for me to pick up that 1 ounce jig, or it's time for me to pick up that. Brandon Polinick's super at that. You know, dude, he'll throw a glide bait that's as long as my leg, you know, and catch freaking 2-pounders on it when he won up at the James. Same thing. You know, we were talking about this here not a week ago, and he goes, I had an hour window when the shade line created itself, and I'd throw that great big glide bait out there, you know, that was 10 inches long on the Potomac or on the James. And he said, I had an hour left. I only had one fish. It had been a rough day. I knew I had to leave at like 12:05 to make it back in time. And he said, and I get, you know, an 8, a 7, and 2 3/4. And he said, and I win the Open. And it's just that gut feeling. It's that, hey, now or your back's against the wall. There's the other situation. Your back against the wall. What do you have the most confidence in? I've caught more big fish on a 1 ounce jig than I never owned a 1 ounce jig until I started fishing professionally, and I started going to Florida. Obviously, in Southern Illinois, that normally don't play, you know, and it's just absolutely the opposite, as most of you guys probably know. And I caught 2 of my fish that I weighed in the Classic on a 3/4 ounce jig, you know, and it was when they wouldn't buy, you know, my D-bomb with the 5/16 ounce weight on it. But I picked up that 3/4 ounce jig and I generated those bites. And it's a confidence thing. It's a gut feeling. And I hope that helps answer your question. But
we got an interesting fact that just came over the airwaves here. Bradley says, did you know that there were 1,000 bananas on the Titanic the day that it sank?
That's probably
it's true. That's bad luck.
See?
There you go. Well, you can't argue with that.
Nope.
Hey, Ron.
I know that. That's an interesting fact. I will regurgitate that. I promise you. That is some good stuff to know.
I mean, you heard it right here, man. It's
factual.
It's got to be right.
Yep.
Ron,
Yeah.
Tell us about. Let's take a little side note here. Tell us about the big smallmouth that you caught today.
Oh, this show is not about me, buddy.
Oh, but for a minute it is.
It's about fishing though, and if you caught a big smallmouth, we want to hear about it.
Well, had a guide trip today, and went pretty well. It's post spawn up here at Mille now. There's a few spawners, but it's basically post spawn. So we were chasing some post spawn fish where we could. We had a big north wind today, so we were relegated to the north side, and I wanted to fish this boulder set that was a little farther off the bank, but it was too windy, and it was hard for the clients to present a bait. So I was like, well, let's run back east, and I got a section of rock that's closer to the bank. We can actually fish it, and I got lucky. And anyway, long story short, I caught a 22-incher, 22 1/8, and weighed 6'7" as a post spawn fish.
Wow,
Jesus.
That's
my big 100 plus when it was
spawning. Maybe 8.
How old do you think that fish is, Ron?
It could be. My biologist buddies tell me that potentially could be a 20-year-old fish. It may not be, but it could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, when we go to the St. Lawrence, we catch a lot of 4, 5, and 6s will be weighed in here and post spawn even, and they've told us the same thing. 12, 15 plus years, and that's just a phenomenal feat. It really is. Congratulations. That's a great catch.
Well, thank you. It really highlights how important it is to take care of those big fish when you do get one.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we got some pictures of it and so on and so forth, but we took care of her, and she swam off really healthy and felt good about that. And I hope some kid comes behind me and catches it tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So tell us you caught it on some real exciting bait,
this crazy thing called a Ned rig. That dang thing, I tell you, it's I think it just doesn't quit working, man. There's no negative cues to the bait. I mean, there's nothing on that bait that's going to tell that smallmouth there's something bad about that. And kind of like a Texas rig worm that just keeps on working.
Yeah, it's
amazing. I really do that. Yeah. And that thing, I tell you what, that thing. What amazes me about smallmouth fishing, even though we have a lot of smallmouth here at Tablerock, but because of the years of going to Champlain and to St. Clair and the St. Lawrence, and I've never been to Mille, and I want to go so bad.
Come on.
Good friends of mine, Josh Douglas and Father and all those guys that are from there and fish it all the time. I'm gonna go one time. But what amazes me is, and I don't know if you guys find this in Mille, but it would surprise me if you don't, is that I'm not a big scent guy, but those smallmouth with scent is just. It just amazes me. I mean, from years ago, from Lake Erie and all that. I mean, the gulp and you name it. It seems to really make a difference. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
I agree 1,000%. And you really, I've really double noticed it this year. And some of the products you were just talking about, and it's I don't know what the deal is, but my dad taught me one thing a long time ago: don't argue with the fish. You don't win that. See, if it works, use it. And then, boy, you're right, it worked.
Interesting conversation I had. Ed Larson owns Chompers Baits up here. And he told me a story years ago. I've known Ed for years and years and years. And he told me Chompers has a garlic scent to everything that they make beyond garlic scents. I mean, good God, you can smell it a mile away. Oh, yeah. And it's so heavily garlic. And he told me that he walked into some place, and I can't recall where he said it was, but it was full of crawfish. And he said the aroma of garlic was so strong in that building that was emitted from those crawfish that's really where they started that whole process from. And for Chompers. And I wouldn't have never known that, and he said he wouldn't have either. But, I mean, there is definitely something about all that, but I didn't know crawfish emitted that garlic smell.
I didn't either.
There's a species.
That's interesting.
There's a species of crawfish that migrated here from Italy. That's probably the kind of crawfish that he had there. It was like an Italian species. I'm just a wild guess, but maybe that's where the garlic came from. That's interesting.
Is that a dad joke?
That's a dad joke. Courtesy laugh. Courtesy laugh. Kyle wants to know, what was your prediction, Chad, for the winning weight at the Classic? Did you have did people have an idea what they thought it was going to take?
I was off by 1 pound.
Really?
Yep, I was 1 pound heavy.
Okay.
Yep.
Good deal.
Sure was. I was really close.
So Cody wants to know. By the way, Ron, congratulations on that smallmouth. That's awesome, man. And
thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Don't pay attention to what Slim Shoddy says about the Ned rig. We both know it's a killer. Cody says, Chad, are you able to discuss what your strategy was going into day one, and did you change much going into day two with the post frontal conditions and the late start?
So yeah, I'm able to discuss anything. At this point, it's over with. So my strategy going into day one was to make sure that I didn't miss the offshore bite if it did exist, but to capitalize on what I felt like was my strength for that event. Whenever I put my boat on the water and I found that we were in the mid 70s in water temperature and we were 4 feet high and we had more rain came during the event or during pre-practice. So we pre-practiced on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that was the week before. And, so it's a long ways out, but we got more rain. The water level didn't go down and everything. And so what happened was, I tried to find those fish that I pushed the flipping issue. I pushed it big time. And I used my practice period for different baits, different locations of the lake, different depths. And I really had the gut feeling that there was a lot of fish that were up shallow that we weren't going to get to, but quickly into it, I got the feeling that I knew there were good fish at Ray Roberts, big fish, and I knew that somebody was going to put 5 of them together. But I also had the gut feeling that there just wasn't a heavy fish population there, and that was amplified by the time of the year. We weren't in a spawn or a pre-spawn situation, so all those fish weren't necessarily forced to be shallow. They had the option, and there was a lot of them. As any lake across the nation, you have waves of spawners that come and go, and I knew that there was going to be some big fish caught in that standing timber because that's how some of those tournaments are won there, that they go post spawn and they suspend on trees. And then there's some that get on hard spots and things of that nature. So I really didn't want to miss that. So my strategy was, make sure that I covered my butt and tried to cover every aspect of that. But very quickly on day one, practice revealed, I started shallow. I knew that I wanted a bait that I could fish shallow and move with, and then I wanted to find a bait or two that was real efficient at flipping, because there was tons of willow trees and bushes that had 2, 3, 4 foot of water on them, and then there was water beyond that we couldn't get to. We just simply could not fish. And I had a really good first day of practice. I did. And I fell on that swim jig bite right out of the gate, and it worked for me really quickly. I caught some really big fish right out of the gate with it. And then I flipped a few good fish, and I thought, man, I knew this was going to go down like this, but I can't forget about that offshore bite. So I just kept with my game plan, and that was to cover as much water as I could. I felt like I'd already found my moving bait, which was my swim jig. And then my flipping baits started to dial in. I was catching some on a D-bomb on the Cali Love, and I was catching some on a tube, and I caught some on a jig, and so I just kept going with that. But as far as it changing during the tournament, man, after the late start, so the first day went about as planned, with the exception of I never caught the quality during the tournament that I caught during practice. And I started questioning myself, what's happened here? Has this weather moved them offshore? Has the heat got to them at this point because the water temperature is going up? And I was like, man, have they moved on me? Have they got out in this medium depth milfoil stuff that I found? Probably at the end of the day, I questioned myself a little bit too much. I didn't stick with my guns and just bear down and go at it. However, with that being said, yeah, the late start, though, definitely affected us, because I figured out over the practice period there was a window of about an hour and a half there that was golden, and that was from takeoff 6:15 to about 8:30, and I was right. Look, we're not privileged to any of this information until after the tournament's over, until after we're finished. We can't look at Bass Track. We can't look at anything. So we don't know what time catches happen. But after the fact, whenever I look back at the history and I seen, you know, Kennedy and Hank and some of those, man, they blistered them right out of the gate. And, you know, some of the biggest catches came in the first hour and a half, 2 hours of the day. And of course, the fish that I caught, even though they weren't big, the majority of my bites came that first hour and a half the first day. And then, of course, that didn't even exist the second day. It happened for about 15 minutes on the second day for me. And it started peeling off for a lot of guys. So I wasn't off on what my thought process was and what I felt like was going to happen. I was off on where I needed to be. And believe it or not, I was within about a quarter of a mile of where I needed to be to bust them up. And I was doing the exact thing that I needed to be doing. And that's what's probably the most heartbreaking thing of the whole deal for me, knowing that, you know, man, this is my 7th Classic, and that, you know, nerves didn't get me. I wasn't bothered by stress. I felt like I was pretty dialed in. I couldn't have asked for any better conditions for Texas in June for it to be 4 foot high and in the mid 70s at that point. And, you know, at the end of the day, 6 hours literally just wasn't enough time for me. I refer back to that time management deal. I hate that time restraint. It works towards spinning me out whenever I have only 8 hours. And now I know I only had 6 to start with. I can be as efficient. I fished clean. But yeah, at the end of the day, I still question myself. And believe it or not, I made an adjustment on the second day about 10:30 to the conditions that rose. Even though the storms delayed us, and I caught like 8 or 10 fish right out of the gate, but only one of them kept. And then I kept questioning myself, what's going on? Why did my size fall off? What has changed here? I couldn't figure out why I was getting so many bites. And they weren't what I caught in practice, but they were in the same places. And because we weren't in a pre-spawn or a spawn deal, I mean, it wasn't like the females had left and now I'm catching the males. And I never put my finger on it. And it was so frustrating. And so on the second day, when we only had 6 hours, about 10:30, 11 o'clock, you know, the wind picked up just for a few minutes on us. And it started, I knew that my pattern was changing to more so of a pocket and a deep creek deal to a main lake deal, because I was getting more bites farther and farther out toward the main lake. And I was really wanting to concentrate that. But the first day, the wind blew so hard on half my stuff, I couldn't even fish it. And the second day, then it didn't blow hardly at all after the storms moved through, but it picked up for just a little bit. I picked up a chatterbait. I caught a 4-pounder, and I thought, man, this is it. And that lake was so frustrating, so hard to pin down, that I caught that 4-pounder and I spent another hour and a half of the 6 hours that I had fishing that pattern and running different points, and I never had another bite doing it. I'm like, what is going on? You know, why am I just not falling on the right fish, or am I doing something wrong again? And if you guys think that you're the only ones to question yourself through that whole period, you're wrong, because we do it all the time. I mean,
it makes you feel better, Richard.
Yeah, I feel a little better.
That's that ghost fish.
It happens, and you just. It's frustrating, but it's fishing. It's part of it. That's why.
No doubt.
That's why they sell fishing license, not catching license.
Right.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Tom says he heard quite a few mentioning a tube bait at the Classic, which seems not to get mentioned a lot anymore. Do you, Ron, Chad, do you guys throw a tube much? I actually flipped one the other day. I mean, I still throw a tube quite a bit. What do you guys?
I love that. Chad was talking about chompers. I love that chompers tube. When I'm down home in Southern Illinois, that, you know, Texas rig that, I'd throw that in the winter some, throw it in the summer. That's a good bait. I don't think it gets much play.
4.5?
Huh?
Is that chompers a 4.5 inch, or is it a 4 inch?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Pretty wide body tube. That's a confidence bait for me.
If you bring up tubes, what hook do you throw on your tube, Ron?
Well, I used to throw the old Shaw Grigsby hook that's got the clip on it, you know.
Yeah, the HP hook.
And now they've got them where it's got that plastic little keeper that the top of the tube sits on top. Tube hooks, you get rid of the clip, and Dennis Dunn actually told me to try that, and it'll stick them pretty good. But that tube in general, Texas rig, is a confidence bait of mine at home. And then here, the tube, of course, we throw, with the open hook. But I've gotten away from that here because they tend to swallow it. And, I've sadly have to admit I've killed a few fish on the tube here. And for whatever reason, they don't seem to swallow the Ned rig as bad. Maybe I'm just picking up on the bite better. I'm not sure.
Chad, what about you on that tube hook?
So the tube hook that I use, this kind of goes back, and I won't get too stretched out here, but Bill Lowen Bill Lowen's a phenomenal tube fisherman, and he uses it in his arsenal and has for a long time. And he's one of the best shallow water fishermen that we're ever going to run against. I promise you. He's consistent as hell, no matter where you go. And he told me a while back that the biggest mistake that most people use on a tube for hookup ratio, and it's a bite catch ratio deal, is that whenever he uses an EWG style hook. Now he uses a Hayabusa hook, but he said it's the rigging part. So when you go in the tip of the tube, come immediately back out so that you only have about 1/8 inch of that tube in that hook bite, and it lays on that shoulder better, which allows the tube to not pull down into the bend of that hook whenever you set the hook. So a lot of our EWG hooks, as you well know, today now have a recessed or a back slant on the shoulder of the hook at the bend. And that's why, it's to keep that bait from sliding down into that bend of the hook and keep it from catching the fish. It just wads up. So I started experimenting with hooks, and it was right before Lake Fork. I started doing it here at Tablerock a couple years ago, and Dave Mansu actually told me how to side hook one, and we started side hooking them. But you get line twists like mad. Now you'll catch them, but your line twist is insane. I mean, like after 20 minutes, you have to strip line off of your rod, re-rig the thing. That's not good. So I started playing around after I talked with Bill, and he said you got to leave the eye of that hook exposed, and it'll keep that tube on that hook better, and you'll catch more of them. And so I started playing with that. I can run across this Gamakatsu hybrid hook, and it was designed by Mike McClellan, who lives here. And so it was just one I picked up a few. And the reason I picked it up is because Stacy King told me he'd been using it here, and he said no matter what bait you use it on, it sticks them all. So I was like, okay, Stacy's a great fisherman. He's a good friend of mine. So I started using it, and I thought, man, I'm going to use that in that tube in practice because it doesn't line twist. I didn't care if I caught them. I just wanted the bites, and I didn't want the line twists throughout the day. So I rigged it on that hybrid hook, and shit, the next thing I know, I'm catching 90+% of them. And I'm like, and I'm not getting line twists. I'm like, what's going on here? And so we'll go to Lake Fork. And so pre-spawn, spawn, and just barely post when the bluegill spawn goes on. That's when I really fish the tube a lot. And I do it because it's a bluegill looking bait, and it's just real easy in, real easy out in the spring when you got flooded bushes. It's a good bait for that. And if you want something with a different profile, it glides, all of that stuff. I went to the 5/0 in that Gamakatsu hybrid hook. And, when you peg, I always peg my weight, but I don't peg it tight against the eye of the hook. I always leave it up about 1/2 inch. So that tube really has a lot of movement, a lot of glide. To go to Lake Fork, and next thing I know, shit, the first couple I catch on, it's like an 8, a 7, a 6, and I've got them drilled. And I'm like, I'm liking this right out of the gate. Well, crap, I top 10 on it, and that's why I caught almost every one of them on the tube. And I didn't lose hardly any of them. And that's why I wouldn't fish it before. And a good friend of mine, Glenn Brown, who's passed now, unfortunately, we lost him to colon cancer when he was 42. And, he actually, the 2 tubes that I fish are ones that me and Glenn were friends for years and years and years. And he's just a tube fanatic, and he loved that. And he won a couple of tournaments that we fished FLW with, and on that tube. And so, that's kind of what guided me toward it. But that's what I do. And I always fish it I always fish it on 20-pound gamma fluorocarbon. I always fish it on a 5/16 ounce weight. And now I'll probably never go back to anything but this 5/0 Gami hybrid hook, because I caught most of my fish at the Classic on it because they were just barely post-spawn. It's just a bluegill deal. You know, bluegill are predators of bass whenever those fish are garden fry or when they're on the beds. I caught a ton of fish off the beds with it at Fork. You know, and I caught a ton of fish just flipping those dead willow trees. I mean, a 7/8, a 6/10, and so it's a big fish bite bait. I have no problems fishing a smaller bait to get a big fish to bite it. Baby D-bomb, same way in Florida. I rely on that thing. It's made me over $500,000 in Florida just flipping mats with the baby D-bomb, and it's that big. You know, I caught my personal best, a 13/10 on it. I mean,
wow!
You can't argue that. So I'm like, I have a ton of confidence with it, and that's what and how. And I'm sorry to get so in depth with that, but you know,
no, that's good info.
That's
I'm listening on that.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man.
So
that's really good info.
On that hybrid hook, is it a different gap than an EWG?
Yes, so it's a crossbreed, and that's why it's between an O'Shaughnessy hook and an EWG. So it doesn't have as big as bite, but it has a recessed shoulder that's pretty nice on it, so the bait stays up on it pretty well.
Huh, that's good. I'm gonna look at it. Yeah.
When you catch a fish on that bait, one of two things is going to happen. Either the tube will continue to stay on the shoulder, or it will rip completely away and be completely sideways on the hook, which doesn't matter. It's out of the way. And so one of those two things will happen every single time you set the hook on that.
Do you use that on any other techniques or just tubes?
What's that now?
Do you use it on any other techniques or just on tubes?
I am starting to work with it with other baits. I just haven't had a lot of time on it with, say, on the D-bomb. So the Missile Baits D-bomb is a bait that I dearly love to flip, has caught me a ton of fish over time, but I've also lost some fish on it. I've struggled with hook sizes. I typically always use a straight shank hook. I open it up, but the bigger hook that you use in that bait does not constitute catching more fish. And I've done it a million times, and I honest to goodness, I'm still looking for a better mousetrap. I mean, I want my bite catch ratio to be in that high 90 percentile range, and when it gets to that range, I'll live with it. I feel like I've got the best case scenario for all the equipment that I have matched up: line, rod, reel, hook set, style, all that. That's where I want to be, and that's where I have to be. But the straight shank don't get you there. It'll get you to about 75. And that's not good enough for me. So I've been playing with it. I've been playing with different EWG hooks. I've been playing with that. I just don't have enough time, honestly, to be able to tell you what I think that's going to happen with that. Now at Guntersville, where I top 20'd here just about a month ago, I started using a new EWG from Owner, and I caught at Guntersville. I caught all my fish on a Cinco, and I caught, believe it or not, and I caught them off the bluegill spawn. That's what it was, and that's why I caught them off the Cinco. I was making long casts with 12-pound line, and I actually ran into waterfront tackle there at Guntersville, and I seen these Owner hooks that I had not seen before, and I think they've been out for a while. I just didn't pay attention to them, and it was an EWG style hook, but it had a good shoulder on it. I thought, man, you know, that might work as a tube hook. Now I'm going to buy some packages of these and try them in my tube. And
is it an extra wide gap?
No, it's not the extra wide gap. It's just the regular wide gap. I can't. I'd have to look to see exactly on the package what it is.
Maybe the J style, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
It might have been.
It's funny you say that. So this weekend I was punching over in Southern Illinois in some water willow, and I personally don't like a straight shank hook. It seems like every time I set the hook, I catch them in the bottom jaw. And I've snelled it, I've palmarred it. It just doesn't work for me. So I've always flipped an EWG, and I was flipping that EWG extra wide gap by Owner this weekend. Just happened to be on there. and knock on wood, I had like a 95% hookup ratio with every fish that bit. I mean, it was I hardly missed, and I caught 25 going down a stretch. So, I mean, it was a solid stretch of bank that I was down. It's fun catching them, but that extra wide gap by owner is phenomenal.
I think it's a J style. It's called the J style.
So they make a J style, and then they make the extra wide gap.
Okay.
I have both. I use the extra wide gap for tubes. That's why I was wondering.
Okay.
So. Yeah, and that might be because I haven't used that hook yet. So, but I had probably a 98 to 99% bite catch ratio on the Cinco by rigging it the same way I did the tube, not putting it above the eye. I was fishing it weightless, and I didn't deep hook hardly any of them. So, you know, and believe it or not, so here's the thing, and this is something I've never have done before in my life. I used the same hook all 3 days and must have caught 120 on it.
Wow. Hey,
never changed.
What size hook were you throwing on that?
A 4-aught.
A 4. Okay.
A 4-aught. Yep.
Is that what you do with your D-bomb? Is that a 4-aught too?
So the D-bomb, I do try to step up to a 4-aught. Typically, I'll use a 3, open it up, and cut some of the D-bomb off so that I get that hook point down into the thin part of the D-bomb. The baby D-bomb's not an issue. It's always a 3W. It's always a 3-aught Gami super heavy cover if I'm braid, heavy cover if I'm not, because it's thinner. So the thicker the bait is what causes you the problem, in my opinion. You know, the thicker the plastic, and you can't side hook that bait. So you have to center punch it. And the EWG, though, you come through and then you can text pose it, which makes a huge difference. And that's why I'm continuously looking. Now, I am not, for whatever reason, and I don't really have, I can't sit here and say this is why I don't subscribe to an EWG during flipping, but that extra wide gap, after experiencing that owner deal on the Cinco on 12, now this was 12-pound line that I'm throwing this on, and longest cast as I could possibly make, because that was the key. If I got on top of those fish, it was game over. I had to know where the bluegill beds were, or be able to see the bright spots a long ways away, make the longest cast that I could on a 7-foot medium heavy rod, 12-pound line, and then, you know, and never move the bait. That was my key.
Yeah, Hellabass says we always catch them when we go out together. We've only been fishing one time together, Rich. But we did catch them.
So it's a true statement.
So it's a true statement. That's right. We'll just keep it. Well, we'll do it once a year and we'll be fine, I think. We got several people on here that have been catching them on a tube. Dave said he caught some at Egypt today on a tube. Kyle says he caught some on a Chomper's tube. Stupid.
Yeah, I haven't got that deal going on yet. I've tried that. I know it works. I know they catch them. Well, Ron, they catch them up there in your area. A lot on that. I know they do. And it's just not something that I've done. I get up there and I can't hardly help myself from drop shotting up there.
That works too.
Yeah, it tends to.
Yeah, that's you know, I was just up there, Chad. I was up there with Ron last week. I was up there for like 4 days, had the time of my life. But I was amazed at how you see that little black saucer, you know, the smallmouth bed, and the water was just dirty enough to where you couldn't see a 4-pound smallmouth on that bed. But you flip that little drop shot in there, and you kind of pop it a little bit. Next thing you know, your line's moving off. Yeah, and you pull up on it, and there's a 4.5 pound smallmouth on there, and you're like, how in the world did I not see that big fish sitting down there? It's amazing how camouflaged they are.
It is. It's amazing. But yeah, you know, that whole that brings in a whole different dynamics. Bed fishing. It's really interesting to see how different guys approach that. Now, I can tell you, my experiences with that type of situation is, you know, I very seldom fish a drop shot on a bed and fish. Very, very, very seldom. I'm the guy that wants to work the fish. You know, smallmouth are a little bit different creatures. They're definitely different to bedfish. For largemouth, as they get pressured or they're caught 2 or 3 times, they they tend to be a little bit more leery, and you have to approach them a little bit differently at times, or if it's later in the year, earlier in the year. So I like to work the fish. I like to read him. That's just something that I really like to do, is read that fish. What presentation, what bait. Immediately, I'll have 3 or 4 different baits laid out there, but most of them will be Texas rig. Now, the other bait that's kind of my fallback on bed fishing is a shaky head. Now, I've got different baits that I put on that, the Missile Baits quiver, a Cinco, a finesse, a zoom finesse, if that goes to that. But now that Missile has that smaller quiver out, I just catch more fish on it. But it's all about being able to read the fish, he'll let you know what you're going to get away with and what you're not going to get away with, whether you have to work him, whether you have to fire him up, what mood he's in or she's in. And it's interesting. I feel like you have to pay attention to all of those clues all at one time. And you have to shorten that period of time, because if you spend an hour on a fish, man, that's an hour out of your day. That's a long time when you only got 8 hours to roll. And and the best. So here's another thing about Elite Series anglers. I promise you that our best days sight fishing have come finding the fish that have just pulled up. You don't know where they're at. You don't have them pre-marked. You've not seen them the day before or 2 days before or 3 days before. You found them that day. We have no problem putting the trolling motor on high and rolling and finding that fish or those fish for that particular day. And I had to do it at Fork. I pulled into an area I hadn't even been into in practice and caught a limit out of, because I was struggling on the 3rd day, and I made the final day because of it. And actually they changed so fast. Just to give you a quick update on that, I found I rolled through a real quick area, and Ito was in there, and he is I hadn't been around that guy much, but that dude is a drop shot finesse spinnerbait or spinning rod fishing fanatic. He can put a drop shot in places that I can't get within 10 feet of with the drop shot. Okay, that's how precise and precision accurate he is with that, because I watched him on a fish that I could see as I was going around him, and he couldn't catch it. Now that had nothing to do against him he's a phenomenal fisherman, but I was looking in those areas, those same areas, just as he was, and we were just trying to find new fish to pull it up. And as I went around him, he had just went through an area that I know that those fish weren't there. There was 2 4-pounders that probably swam away from the bed whenever he came up or wasn't there. And I just happened to pick up at the right time, right place type thing, but they were so spooky, I couldn't catch them. I came back an hour later, had to work the fish for 5 minutes, got him locked on, and ended up catching him weight 4.9. And the other one left whenever I caught the male. But it definitely helped me. And it was just another situation where, I rolled through an area during the spawn, a late spawn, that I had no clue if there was even going to be a fish in there. But I didn't have any problem during the tournament doing that. And then I've seen one that I had to come back to an hour later to get to bite, because their mood changes that quickly. So you have to keep that in mind. When you're fishing, you just have to keep all that in mind. Largemouth specifically, smallmouth, they're, like I said, they're different animals. They're definitely different when they're on bed.
Yeah, definitely.
No doubt.
Well, let's touch a little more on this classic. I had a couple things that you don't really hear about. You watch the tournament footage on the live deal, and you get to see all that. You get to see the anglers, but there's some things that probably happen behind the scenes that the general public doesn't get to know. So like, the dinner, the boatyard, and like backstage, and on the behind the scenes on the stage. What can you touch just a little bit on those 3 topics? The dinner, behind the stage, and then the boatyard. That's kind of foreign to most people.
Yeah, so the boatyard is just a place where we stage everything in town. So you have, at this venue, we had the Omnia Fort Worth Hotel in Fort Worth, and then we had Lake Ray Roberts that was 60 miles away. Fort Worth traffic is the worst traffic that I think I've ever experienced in my entire life. It was horrendous. It was aggravating. I wanted to shoot about every other person that I came across because they're texting, wrecking, or cutting you off, flipping you the bird. I don't know what the hell. Anyway, it was aggravating. But the boatyard is not far from the hotel. Obviously, they had a lot of the service crews stationed there, so that if we had issues with any of our equipment, they would repair it for us right there. And they had all those same service crews at the lake, so that if something happened while we were at the lake 60 miles away, they could fix it there. And it spoils you. No, dude, anything goes wrong, you pick up the phone, and it's like the NASCAR crew couldn't even hold a candle to these guys. I mean, they are freaking on it. It's a blessing. God love them. We can't live without them. And but the boatyard was kind of at this venue. It was kind of a staging area for everything. So you'd get there's anglers that did several different things. You had a room at the hotel. The motel was the lake was 60 miles away. So we launched at 6:15. So if you left your boat in the boatyard, you had to leave the hotel, get in a shuttle at like 3:15 in the morning, get to your boat, your truck, drive to the lake, then launch, then fish, then drive back to the arena, back to the boatyard. But like for me, I had my fifth wheel at the lake, so I would drive into the weigh-in after the tournament, weigh my fish, then turn around and drive back to the lake so that I was there. Now that was during the competition days. Now the dinner, the Classic's a different deal. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're on our own. We can stay wherever we want. We don't have a room in Fort Worth. The boatyard's not open to us, and you practice for 3 days. Then on Monday, you check into the hotel at Omnia Fort Worth, and that's about all you got to do. You can put your boat in the boatyard, do whatever you want there. Tuesday, let's see what went on to Tuesday. Tuesday was tournament briefing day. So they had all us together. We met all the sponsors, all the tournament staff. They went over everything that was going to go down during the Classic, how it was going to go down, and then prepared us for Wednesday day, which was an official timed practice day that we had with a marshal. And so they basically did a run through in case they needed to adjust anything, and they run us through. So in this event, it was interesting. This is the first time I ever went through this. So as you noticed, until the final day, nobody brought 5 fish to the stage. That's because they had a weigh-in trailer at the lake. So they walked us through all of that weigh-in procedure. So once we launched, we went out, we did what we did. We come back in, we loaded our boats. You go through the line, you weighed in at the lake. They gave you a ticket for what your 5 fish weighed. You could retain up to 2 fish to take back to the arena, which was 60 miles away, because they're trying to manage fish conservation and limit, mortality rate, which was a good thing. I elected not to bring none of mine back, just simply because I didn't have a good weight. I knew, it was what it was, and I just assumed turn them back live and good to go. It was hot. So they had Texas Park and Wildlife working in conjunction with all of us. I mean, they'd inject oxygen, checked oxygen in our live wells, iced them down, added G-juice, additives, everything at the lake in 2 different stages. Plus, then they had another Texas Park and Wildlife crew meet us immediately whenever we got to town, because it would take sometimes up to 2 hours to get back to Fort Worth, which was 60 miles, because of the traffic. It's a grind. I mean, it was an exhausting, and it always is an exhausting grind. It's fun. I can't describe the feeling of walking or getting pulled through that stage. It's like nothing that an angler has ever experienced. The very first time I did that, I thought that I'd pretty much, as a fire captain, and having 2 different crews underneath my command and making life and death situation calls, I thought I'd seen it all, and that the Classic was not that big a deal. And hell, the night before the first day, I never slept a wink, and I didn't think that could be possible, and it was that type of emotions that runs through you. And then you got all this huge crowd and this gigantic stage. It's quite the production, and there's a lot of moving parts. and there's a lot of hard work that goes into a lot of everything. The dinner on Wednesday night is basically to celebrate the AOY, to congratulate him. Everybody gets together, all the contestants, their wives and everything. So that's on Wednesday after the official day of practice. So when we come back into Fort Worth, dump our boats at the yard, everybody goes in, gets all gussied up, and there you go. And you go out to dinner, and Bass puts on a great show and a great shindig, and we get to listen to the AOY do his speech, and congratulate. And obviously this year was Clark Wendlandt from last year, and all that. So yeah, that's kind of how it all goes down. It's definitely a cool experience.
Well, I have to say, you and the missus looked pretty sharp. You guys dressed up, cleaned up nicely.
I will think. Oh, yeah.
She did anyway.
Yeah. I know you didn't have to say that, but I appreciate it.
We keep it real here. Keep it real. That's good. Let's see what else I had. Did you had a couple questions for him? Did you? Let's see here.
I got one.
Okay.
It's backtracking a little bit, but I, like everyone else, I enjoy the coverage of the Classic, and it's a tournament you're trying to win, obviously. And so how much do guys deviate from what they're known for if they think that that's what they have to do to win? You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, I 100% understand, and they deviate 100%. It's a no tournament. It's you go for it. You if you even think of a way that you caught a giant that could help you 10 years ago, you'll pull that out. It's just no holds barred. Yeah, I don't know how else to. That's why whenever I fished the New Orleans Classic, that we ran 127 miles one way, because we knew it was going to be won in Bayou Signet. Hell, I would have never won 100. I didn't never run 127 miles. I get lost after 10, and then you're going to run me 127 miles through a bayou, for the love of God, man. I can't find me in 6 years.
Alligators and Sasquatches.
Yeah, and that's the year Gary Klein got shot at down there. I mean, that's life and death, for the love of God. Oh my God, what have I got myself into? But yeah, it doesn't matter, and it's one of those deals where a second place, Matt Airy, second place in the Classic. He's a phenomenal angler, and but the fact of the matter is, in 3 months, hell, there are very few people going to know that he finished second to that, but they'll know Hank Cherry won it. So we all throw it all out on the line. And you have to, as just human nature is, you hate to fail. But that's one of those tournaments where, look, you prepare yourself all year. If I make the Classic, I got to go for it. And it's just like the next two tournaments rolling up for me. I got to go for it. I'm behind in the points a little bit. I know I got to catch them pretty good in the next two tournaments, and I know what it's going to take, or I think I know what it's going to take, and I'm going to go for it. I'm going to roll the dice. You gamble. You put it all on the line. Shit, it doesn't matter at that point. You know what I mean? I mean, it's all about standing on the stage, hoisting that trophy, getting that $300,000 check, and getting your name put down in history that you were a Classic champion. And that's what aggravates me is, I felt like this was one of my better chances of possibly having an opportunity to do that. And it just didn't work out, but it wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't for being what I felt like was really close, but yeah, it didn't matter. Hell, I was throwing great big glide baits out there, and I ain't thrown them 100 times in my entire career, for the love of God. I thought, shit, Brand probably catch 6-pounder on. Maybe I can. I don't know, man. You just throw it out there and reel it back. May go back and forth. I don't know.
I can tell you this, that you fished 7 Classics, and the 3 of us haven't fished any, and we look up to you. And so just know that there's a lot of us guys that are following you and the other guys there, and none of you are failures to us. That's for sure.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. Thank you so much, and that means a lot. And honest to God, as much as it would mean to me to win the Classic, I've had such supporting fans and sponsors, partners over the years that I would love to win it for them just more than anything, just to reiterate the fact that anybody could do this. If a guy that grew up in a town of 850 can make a Bassmaster Classic, could possibly win it.
Yeah. that
would mean more to me for the guys that have continuously supported me and stayed in touch, and that's I want to do it for them more than anything, and that's what's disappointing to me is I didn't get the job done. So, but thank you. I do greatly appreciate that.
That just shows what a great angler you are, that you truly care about the folks that support you at the end of the day.
Without them, I couldn't do this. I couldn't.
Exactly. To piggyback off of what Ron asked there, how do you prepare different from a regular season elite event versus the classic? I'm assuming there's a difference.
Oh yeah. Well, the regular season event, I'll only allow a short period of time to gamble. And on a regular season event, it's about points. It's about not having a disaster. And I've had a couple of disasters this year, and it's about trying to limit those, I guess you would say. So you will fish safer. You'll fish for bites rather than quality, and you'll limit the amount of time that you give yourself throughout that 8-hour period for quality. Versus in the classic, it's all about quality at that point, because somebody's going to bust them up. There's not a question, and really there's not a question in a regular series event. Somebody's going to bust them up, and they're going to catch them big, and there's going to be probably more than one guy do it. But you can't fall to that mindset. You say, okay, I can go over here and catch 14 pounds. I might be able to catch 20 over here, but this is iffy. So I can only give myself so much time here, because if this goes south, if the 14-pound goes south, then I have to struggle to get it, which obviously happens, but a 14-pound stringer will finish me 50th or 60th, and I won't finish 95th, where I get no points. And it's all about making the classic. It's all about AOY run. You look at back in history, and almost all the guys, there's very, very seldom a guy that makes the classic that don't make every one of them will miss a 50 cut at some point during the tournament. Now, the ones that win AOY are the ones that don't miss it by very much, so you don't have those complete disasters, even though I think Clark last year had like an 80 something finish and still won AOY, but it was close with him and Mullins. So, you have that consistency. You fish more for consistency.
Polinick had a 106th place finish one year when he won the AOI.
Really? Yeah.
I
didn't know that.
So you can dig a little hole.
Fish the rest.
Yeah, that's right.
You can have a little hole, then you got to have a phenomenal run, and that's what almost everybody's got in common. Clark made like 3 top 10s in a row last year going into our northern swing. We had Chick, Gunnersville, and then the northern swing to come up, and I was sucking it. I was sucking it up, but I made 3 top 10s, and it catapulted me. I finished 18th in the points of the year, so that's what got me into the classic. You can have a disaster, but you got to combat it with a phenomenal run on the other side.
Yeah, making it hard on yourself, man.
Yeah. But you know what? The ironic thing about that is I'm more terrible about putting a lot of pressure on myself. You want to provide for your family. You want to cut a check every time. And, you think, man, and I'll share something with you guys that not a lot of people know. It was kind of ironic. We had 2 tournaments and then COVID hit. And so we were off for 4 months last year. And, that gives you a lot of time, and you're not fishing, so you're not cutting checks from winnings, but you have sponsorship money that's still coming in, thank goodness. And some of the guys didn't even have that. And Debbie came to me, and she goes, this fall things are going to get pretty tight around here if you don't start making some top 10s. And that pressure it wasn't intentional. It wasn't something that's not come up over the years. And when she said that, it was just in conversation between a husband and a wife. It was just factual for our business, nothing more. And I never took it for anything other than that. And it didn't really add any extra pressure other than I thought, well, she's right. She's the one that runs the book. She knows this stuff in and out. And, and then all of a sudden it just started happening for me. And, next thing I immediately made a top 10 at Guntersville. And then I go to St. Lawrence and I finished 4th. And, it's just like bang, 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 bang. And I have over $100,000 a year just instantly. And it's like, wow, I honestly, God, I can't tell you where that come from. I don't know. It wasn't because of fear of going broke. It wasn't pressure. It literally just happened. I got on a roll, and it seemed like every turn I made was the right one. Hell, at the St. Lawrence, after the second day of practice was almost complete. It was almost dark. I'd been up since 5 o'clock that morning. I'd been on the water since 5 because it stays daylight there like 23 hours out of the day. And I was like, God, I'm so tired. I was exhausted. I was idling back into where I was staying at the campground. And we were on Lake Ontario because they'd opened it up and moved to Clayton because of COVID. And I was idling in. I'm like, shit, that looks like a fish there. That looks like a couple of fish there on side and down image. I was running my Garmin units. I was idling in. I was literally about to fall asleep at the wheel of the boat. I was so tired. It was like 6:30, almost 7 o'clock. And Snowden was on the other side doing the same thing. And I seen 4 or 5 on a little rock, and I turned around and I was like, shit, man, I'm going to see if them are smallmouth. And I threw out there and I caught a 4-pounder. Then I caught a 5-pounder. And then I caught another 4-pounder. And then I caught another 4-pounder. And I thought, shit, I'm just going to keep catching these things because I ain't coming back here. And I caught 2 more, and I thought, maybe you better ease up on this. This might be. And I went down and I found another rock, and I caught 2 more 4-pounders. And then Snowden came across, and he goes, I'm going to the camper. I'm like, go down there 300 yards and fish toward me on this break. And he come back and he called me and he said, I just caught 2 4-pounders and a 5-pounder. I was like, yeah, I've caught 2 more 4-pounders and another 5-pounder. I'm like, dude, we may have just run into something here. And we went in, went to sleep that night, got up the next morning, came back right there and expanded on it. And next thing you know, I finished 4th. And I'm like, man, oh man, what a stroke of luck,
Sounds like your wife needs to tell you that more often.
Yeah.
I don't know if I go with that.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah. A lot of pressure at that point.
Hey, little luck helps, but I mean, you were paying attention to those graphs too, I mean, if you were not paying attention, you could have went right by that.
Boy. And there was nobody else found them. Nobody else. There was nobody else in there. I could not believe it. It was just one of those deals. And then every day I could go in there and catch 20 pounds in less than 30 minutes.
Was it rock stand transition by any chance?
It was just intermittent, bigger boulders on that bank is what it was. And there was just like, there'd be one here, and then 20 yards down, there'd be a bigger one here. And then it was it was the transition from rock into sand. But then there was that extra on there. And that's what they were, on. And then and there were some of them throughout the tournament that were just keying on bait. Like I'd live scope them. I had some stretches that were, if I could get on it quick enough from Clayton before the sun got too high, I could run down them real quick and live scope them, and I'd see one out there and I'd throw to it. He'd bite every time, and that's how I caught him.
Good deal.
We've got a couple questions on here. They've been sitting in the comment section for a minute. Let me ask this one from Josh first, and then Chris has a question. I'll get to that one next. So Joshua says, if you were going to go out and target big fish, what would be your go-to lure?
That would depend on the time of the year for me. If it was pre-spawn, I definitely rely heavily on a jig. I mean, that's just my big fish bait at that point in time, pre-spawn, and a tube. if the jig bite was a little funky, but mostly it would be a jig. 90% of the time it would be a jig pre-spawn in most situations, and not on all reservoirs. Like I said, that's not an easy question to answer because it all depends on where you're at and what type of conditions you're fishing. So, and then if I was in Florida, it would be the baby D-bomb every time, or if I was around heavy vegetation. But if you're in Guntersville, where you've got that early in the year, you got those bigger pre-spawners running around. It's going to be a jerkbait or a lipless crankbait. So it's kind of a hard question to answer, but most of the time it's going to be a jig. Most of the time, unless the water temperature is a lot cooler. Now, like here at Tablerock this year, it's weird how these fish are adapting to this different weather that we're having. We had fish on the beds in 56-degree water here this year, and I don't know that I've ever seen that before. So when you have those conditions, if it's clear, it's one bait. If it's dirty, it's another. So, but you can't ever go wrong with the jig at that point in time. But there is other options out there. I hate to say that, but I know that's kind of misdirecting the question. Brian, you may have a different approach to this.
I like the jig.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like the jig.
I like in that same period, that pre-spawn period you're talking about, I like a big spinnerbait. Like I like to slow roll a big, like a 1/2 ounce or 3/4 ounce with a size 6 Colorado.
Six or seven, and it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I said that's a hard question to answer. It's really dependent on the system and the conditions that you're in at the time. It's different all across the nation, and I apologize. To be a little more specific, I can probably nail it down a little closer, but there is that is a great bait. I mean, I'll tell you something that I experienced years ago on Cedar Lake.
All right,
in Illinois, dude. I mean, I threw a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait, a number 7 willow leaf, and a number 4 Colorado, and caught some of the biggest fish pre-spawn that I've ever caught in my life. And you had to reel it so slow that you could just barely feel that number 7 flop back and forth. And it's just, but that was before big swim baits and glide baits and some of the equipment that we have today. So. Yeah.
So what do they bite? What do they bite at Cedar in the middle of June from like 5 to 9 on a Wednesday night? I'm just
on a Wednesday nighter next week.
86-degree water temperature.
Dude, so I fished Cedar Lake quite a bit, and that was back before I had quite the hours that I've got.
That's a general question.
Like at night, we fish Cedar at nighttime a lot, and I subscribe to the big old 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, number 5, number 6 Colorado spinnerbait. I mean,
heck yeah, buddy.
Those
are good days,
dude. You catch that's so
good
fun.
days.
I got a funny story. I caught a bat one time on Cedar fishing.
Bat with a T.
A bat with a T. I caught it. It gave me a backlash because I made a cast and the damn thing come down and hit my lure and hooked itself. And I'm like, what the hell? I had a backlash beyond backlashes. And I finally just reeled it in to get my bait back and was going to get another rod. And there's a damn bat on the end of it.
That's funny.
So I've had him hit me in the leg and the shoulder and hit the line. But my dad tells a story about a guy that one landed on him and latched onto his leg.
Oh,
and
hell.
It was like a bat.
Like a vampire bat or something.
You have to go to the hospital if you got rabies.
Talk about scaring the what out of you. Jeez.
Yeah,
Chad, I can remember some of those night tournaments down on Cedar. We used to get back in the day, this is in the early 90s. Hell, I can remember getting 40, 50 boats in those things, and they'd have people scrambling everywhere to try and figure out how to get around everything and launched.
Yeah,
those were good days or good nights.
Hey, I fished a night tournament one night on Grassy. This is back whenever I could stay up past 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And, we were out there. We were disoriented. Let's just put it that way. Okay. And next thing I know, we're running through all the standing timber and John boat wide open on it with the 9.9, which wasn't that fast. But at that time, it seemed, in trees, you just see the trees as they go shoo, shoo, shoo by you. Well, that night, and he might be on here. I don't know. Scotty Edwards. That, and I don't think it was that. I might have been at Devil's.
Oh, it is on there.
Is
Johnny's probably on there somewhere, usually.
He's been on here before. I know that.
Yeah. Oh, I know he has. But anyway, it was either there or was it Devil's Kitchen? I think it might have been at Devil's Kitchen, though, during a night tournament. He did the same thing and run up on one of those trees and spent the night out there.
Oh my goodness.
He got high his John boat and locked it froze to death because it got cold as shit. Oh, it was hilarious. Oh my God. This was before cell phone days, so nobody knew that he was stranded out there. Oh,
I wouldn't want to fish Devil's Kitchen at night.
I wouldn't fish Devil's Kitchen, man.
I mean, unless I stayed in the marina and just made hot laps in there, that's it.
Oh no.
I don't even like getting out of there when it's daylight.
Pre-GPS day.
And DK is still well, at least it was, until I came up here. DK was still 1.5 feet, 2 foot low because they're still working on that silly secondary spillway or whatever it is.
Well, it might be a good day to go out there and mark all the stumps or the treetops.
You can only put like 2,000 waypoints on
I know.
I went down there and actually I marked trails. I went down there and marked trails is what I did.
That's a good idea.
But anyway, those were good days, man. Good days.
Good memories. Good times.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's one of the only lakes. Well, that's the lake that puckers me up the most because you're relaxed. You're out running in 75 foot of water,
and then
Hey, I got a question. We're talking about old days and stuff, and but tying that into where you're at now in your career, we were fortunate enough to all of us on Crab Orchard to kind of, I feel like we were ahead of the curve a little bit on swimming the jig a little bit. Back in the day, has that helped you, as through your career?
It has in certain instances for sure. Swimming a jig, fishing that shallow cover, recognizing that no thermocline, high temperature, water willow bite. It certainly has. I really believe that. But at the same time, it has its faults too, because it took me a tremendous time to feel comfortable offshore. Because fish crab orchard, you never caught one over about 3 foot deep. I mean, it just didn't happen. It just did not happen. And so it was that was my biggest struggle, and that was part of the reason I moved down here to Tablerock, is to better myself. And it took several years after I moved down here. I told my wife, I was like, it's so odd. We talk about this all the time, me and her do. It's like I do well in the spring, and then maybe late in the fall. Obviously, shallow water bite situations, And she said that's when you typically win most of your money, and when you've won your tournaments and things of that nature. And why I do so well in Florida, because there's no question you don't fish deep in Florida. It's not an option. And so I said, the funny thing is, I feel like I'm the best that I've ever been at deep water structure because I've moved down here. And this has been a couple years ago. I said, but it just don't show out. And then, finally I go to St. Lawrence and some of those other places and I fish offshore, and it pays off. And so it's helped in some instances, but then it's hindered in others. You just can't live and die by that sword in this industry with these guys that I fish against now. Hell, most of them are in their 20s and early 30s. They already are experts at a lot. They are proficient at every type of situation that you could throw at them. And it's amazing. It really is. I mean, it's just they feel comfortable, or they don't care, or whatever the reason. They're animals, and they are good at it.
Well, I mean, technology's helped out a lot, not just with your Garmin electronics, but with
YouTube.
The knowledge base that you can get now. You don't have to wait for Bassmasters magazine. Now, granted, I'm not an old guy, but that's how I grew up. You know, I fished with Dad, and Dad never fished deeper than 6 foot.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything different than
A lot
that.
of visible
Google
cover.
Earth.
Visible cover fishing the banks. I mean, that's how I grew up fishing. And then all of a sudden, I got this wonderful thing on my John boat called side scan. And oh my gosh, there was a whole new lake that opened up.
Yeah,
right.
Crazy.
It's just a different world that we live in. Like you said, those young anglers, I mean, in a day, they can learn a whole new technique by not even hitting the water, just by looking it up, reading on it, talking to everybody.
They're so tech savvy. It's unreal. It's unreal.
Yeah. I'm lucky to just turn the computer on. So
yeah, they're so far ahead of the curve right out the gate. I mean, you take guys like Jordan Lee and, you know, Brandon Polinick and I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, it is. They're amazing anglers. They've got tremendous careers ahead of them. I mean, and then even though you take a guy like KVD, I mean, you know, he's in his late 40s, maybe even his 50s at this point. You know, he's a great angler, has accomplished a lot of stuff, just won another MLF on Chickamauga. But, I mean, he went dark for a long time. You know, it's not because he isn't a great angler. It's just the competitions. You got your Jacob Wheelers and all this. It's like, oh, my God. You know,
well, the days of the Denny Browers, the Bill Lowens that are, I don't want to call them one-trick ponies, but, you know, if it was a shallow water tournament, Denny Brower was in it.
Yeah.
You know, those were the days of KVD. If it was an offshore tournament, he was in it. Anymore, you got to be versed at everything to compete at that level.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. It really is. But at the same time, it just goes to show you anybody can do it at any given time. You know, you did this. That's the great thing about our sport is we don't have any limitations like, you know, the NFL or the NBA or, you know,
right.
Some of those sports, you don't have to be, you know, 360, 6'4", you don't have to be 7 foot. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. You put the time in, or if you put your tech savvy, and it definitely works to your advantage.
Chris has a question. Or he says he's really looking forward to fishing with you next week. Notice the Tablerock water level has come up quite a bit. Wondering if you are expecting a big pattern change with the water level rise.
Yes, I am. You know, a typical pattern at this time of year, they've already pretty much all moved offshore. Now, I know from being on the water before I left for the Classic, there are some fish offshore because of the water temperature. But there are a lot of fish. So the spawn is delayed big time here, bull shoals, across the nation as a whole. And, you know, with it being 7 feet high right now, I was checking some of the conditions. I actually made a few phone calls to my friends that's been on the water, and there's still a lot of fry. There's a lot of fry garters. There's a lot of fish still up shallow, obviously a lot of cover. Anytime that you're running across those situations, you know, you're going to have a change in pattern. You're going to have scattered fish situations that occur. And we're going to approach them a little bit differently. I'm really looking forward. I'm actually going to get out on the water a couple of days this week just to kind of look at things. I've heard the James is really dirty and it's got a lot of trash in it. That's going to present some interesting opportunities. The lower end's getting some color to it. Anytime that lower end of this lake gets watercolor to it, those bigger fish that tend to stay shallow and they're more vulnerable. So you get some really good catches whenever that goes on. So yeah, there'll be some adjustments that we have to make, but there's still going to be a lot of opportunity for a little bit of everything to go on. It's just a matter of trying to dial in on what's going to be the most efficient. But I'm actually really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun time here in the next couple of weeks. I think I've got 7 trips lined up in the next week and a half. So I'm going to be spending some time on Tablerock and it'll be fun.
Good deal.
I'm actually headed down in early July down to Tablerock. So
there's Scott Edwards was lurking in the background. As soon as you said DK, he
got
himself.
There he is. Scotty was a DK. Was it DK, Scotty, where you got high centered and spent the night out there? Like to froze your butt off?
He don't want to. He forgot. He don't want to talk about it.
Just rub it in a little bit more.
He forgot about it till this show. Now he's
that's all good times, brother. And
yeah. All his buddies are texting
That's
him
good,
out.
dude. We way back. We go way back.
Here's another question. It's you kind of touched on this a little bit, but Dunford Outdoors says, Chad, do you feel growing up fishing Southern Illinois lakes have helped contribute to your success? They say this area is super tough and can help you succeed throughout the rest of the country. So, I mean, those grinder tournaments, do you feel like the days when you were just fishing for a few bites, does that kind of helped you?
Oh, absolutely. I can't tell you how many times literally in my career that I have referred back to those days and said, if you're struggling or you're questioning yourself, and yep, Scott, there's Scott. Yep, it was. Anyway, I can't tell you, like I said, how many times I refer back and go, you think it's tough here? You think it's tough on Gunnersville, or it's Crowder, or you're getting pressure. Remember the days back on Crab Orchard when we fished a 400 boat 2-man team tournament, and you'd wait to get into a spot to go down a stretch that 30 boats had gone down. You think that's tough? That was tough. Yeah. So put your head down, pull your big boy pants up, and get your ass to work. And that's what I would tell myself. It's like, hey, you've been in this situation before and still been able to catch a fish or two. Get with the program. Don't let this get in your head. Don't let it tell you. So, yes, it's helped me immensely knowing that, say, hey, I'm fishing probably the most pressured situation that I could have possibly fished in years ago, and was still able to catch one or two. So let's quit whining and get to work. So yeah, I do. I use that as a motivational tool. I use it as an experience. I say, hell, hey, so everybody else is throwing, flipping bushes with a 1/2-ounce creature bait. Let's lighten it up, And I'll tell you what, something that I learned from being with the whole cottonmouth lure gang up there is that light line, spinning rod, lighter jig, lightweight, smaller bait technique, finesse stuff before it was finesse. Dude, catching a 5-pounder out of a laydown on a spinning rod on 10-pound test line, it doesn't matter. You learn how to handle that situation. You don't have to have 20-pound fluorocarbon or a 50-pound braid and a 8-foot flipping stick and be able to snatch him on the first hook set and get him away from there. Sometimes they won't bite that, so lead him out of there with 6-pound tests at the hook and land that fish and, go home. So yeah, absolutely. It's helped 100%. There's no question in my mind. Now, with that being said, the opportunities there in Southern Illinois, I wish I'd expanded on that a little more. I didn't fish DK and Grassy as much as what I should have. That would have helped diversify me a little bit more so on that deeper water stuff. I've always said, I want to go back there now with some of the equipment and the experience that I have, and I want to get on those lakes and just see if I can do something different than what I did years and years and years ago, and just see how I've changed and how the fish have changed and what they relate to now. I'd love to do that. Hopefully someday I'll get that opportunity to get that done.
It'd probably be a totally different lake to you. I bet you'd see it completely different. Yeah. I always think of, I'm sure you guys have done this, but you fish a farm pond or something when you're a kid, and you go down there, and it's a big old pond, man. It's huge. And then as you get older, you go back and look at it, and you're like, man, that's a mud puddle. Yeah, it used to be so big. It's amazing.
I had the good fortune of fishing Gander Hill out there on the outside of Peeneyville, which is actually a duck and goose club. And I fished it for years with the high school team that we had. Verna May allowed us to be able to bring the high school students out there. And I went out there and fished it and got to learn that lake pretty good with my electronics while I was living there in Southern Illinois, because I wasn't very far from it. And I hadn't been back there in years, 5 or 6 years, until year before last. Until last year. No, it was last year. And I went back last year, and it was my nephew's 12th birthday. And I wanted to take him fishing for a few days and spend a few days with him. So we hooked up for a few days, and I took him, I called, and they allowed me the privilege of being able to take him out there for a day. And they've got a big boat ramp. It's about a 500-acre strip pit, and they've got a boat ramp. So I was able to put my boat on that lake, and I think, and Deacon can fish pretty well. I mean, he's pretty talented for a 12-year-old at that point. He'll be 13 here just in a little bit, but I hadn't been back there in years, and you could catch them in there. I mean, you could catch them, but they were all a lot of 2 to 3 pound fish and occasional 8, but not that occasional. Me and Deacon went out, and our first stop, I think we caught 12 or 15 over 4, and then that day, it was an 8-hour day for us, and I think we caught 54 over 4 pounds that day. And I was just like, oh, this is not a good. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done?
You ruined him.
I told him, I kept trying to make him understand this is not how this normally goes down. You do not know how special this lake is, this experience is. Please appreciate this for years to come, because this does not happen. And it was, and out of 54, he probably caught 45 of them. It was an amazing day, and nothing.
He's like, why is it so hard to win a tournament?
Yeah,
I mean, I just
Well, Chad, why can you not weigh 20 pounds in every day? But we never caught a 5-pounder that day. We never caught 1 5 pounds.
Huh.
And we weighed a ton of them. I thought we caught like 4 8s, 4 9s. We caught one that was 4 12, but we never caught a 5-pounder.
That's interesting.
That was
really interesting.
So where I live at in Cape, I used to live on the other end of town, and there was a subdivision lake. It was a private lake that I got run off of it a handful of times, but it was a really good lake to fish.
So you had permissions, what you're saying?
Yeah, I did, but the guy that I had permission from all the homes
you gave
in there,
yourself permission.
but I didn't have permission from the guy that ran it. But anyway, they had a little boat ramp, and it was like a 27-acre lake, and I would make a lap around there like 3 or 4 laps a night, and my best was like 27 over 4. But they were that's all you caught. I never caught anything under 4, and I never caught anything over 4. They were all the same size, and they were all just 18-inch chunks. I mean, just footballs. And you throw a jig in there, and they just, like they'd never seen a lure before, just crush it. It was probably some of the best fishing. And it spoiled you. And then you go over to Cedar and fish the tournament. It's like, why can't I just catch a 4-pounder today?
It's got the most 17 3/4-inch fish in Illinois.
Yes.
Every year. They never get bigger.
Yeah. So for the next 3 Elite Series events, Deacon starts texting me. He goes, well, Uncle Chad, make sure and throw the football jig. They'll bite it. Hello. And I'm like, but I will. I'll throw it. I promise you I'll throw it.
Yeah, there you go. That's all you can say, man. A couple more comments on here, Chad, and we'll let you go. It's been awesome hanging out with you. Joe Mark says, Chad, 2 weeks ago, the James was dirty, but we did catch about 20 back on that saddle that we did so good on last year. So I think maybe Joe Marks jumped in the boat with you at some point in time. They found some fish back up the James.
Yep. I know where that's at, Joe. That is on my. That's good to know. I've actually checked that twice this year, and they weren't there before the last time that I checked it. So I'll go back up there and revisit that spot. Yeah, me and Joe fell on those fish, and it was a fun time for sure.
And then Eric says he's going to Florida Friday after big bulls and tiger sharks on light tackle. Then he's going to come back and fish the Rock, the 7th of July. There's a lot of people around here that go to Tablerock quite consistently. I've been finding out.
This is going to be my first trip in July.
Yeah, you're going down there in July. What's Jonathan's making a trip down there in July. What do you think is going to be going on? Where are you staying at?
So we're staying. I don't even know.
Is it up to James?
No, but I'm like from the VBR that we're staying at. I'm like 27 minutes from is it Ants Creek?
Ants Creek, yeah, that's just a little bit up to James.
But I'm I'm taking my John boat, so keep in mind I'm not fishing the main lake at all. I'm sticking clear of that.
You got a
You're not
16.
going to be able to in July. The boat trap will kill you.
Yeah. But I can get up on the James, right?
Oh Lord, yeah. I mean, yeah, dude. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, you're fine to go launch in Ansclear Creek and then go on up to James, and that's a good place to be. So here we are, basically middle of June. You're July 7th. It's just really all depends on what the water does. So I really look. We're gonna have another year. It's lining up to be another year like it has for the last couple of years, where water's high for a long time. Then summer, midsummer, they start pulling it down. Now, when they start dropping this lake, and when they get bull shoals and some of those lower lakes that are below us emptied out, and they can start dropping the water level, they'll start pulling some great current on this, and these fish will relate to that current, and they're going to get out on those current breaks up in the swings of the James on hard places. They're going to be out there. You're going to be able to catch your spots in that 20 to 30 foot range, and a lot of them. And then you're going to be able to catch those largemouth. They're going to be anywhere from on top of those hard spots and those points and those channel swings that are on the main river now. And then on out to 20, 30 foot. Depending on the amount of current that's moving and the amount of water they're generating, it will depend on where they're going to position themselves off. But you're going to fall. Unfortunately, we're going to bypass probably that great swim bait, crankbait bite deal. You're going to have to go to a drop shot, football jig, and a spoon bite to light them up. But you're going to find numbers there, and there'll be size all mixed in, and all species will be mixed in with it. So you can fish up the James from Ants Creek up is definitely where I like to live that time of year. So you're going to have to look and see what's going on.
For sure. Hopefully the current's running, because that offshore sounds amazing. It's
fun bite. It really is. I mean, it's a 30 to 50 fish a day stuff. It's depending on where you're at, if you can light 2 or 3 schools up, I mean, you'll catch 15 to 16, 17 pounds pretty easy, probably several times.
Especially if you're throwing a football jig.
Yeah, the football jig is good if they're on the bottom, and then if they get up a little bit, if they aren't too far at the bottom, you can hop it to get them to react to it. But that spoon bite and that drop shot bite are what you'll have to use to light that school up, and you'll have to get them going before you start catching numbers. You'll have a rotation period through there. Tablerock's a weird lake with that. You have to figure out, I'll still throw a crankbait, but I'll only maybe catch 1 or 2. But those 1 or 2 may get that school fired up, and typically they'll be the biggest out of there. And then I'll drop to the swim bait, and then I might throw a mag shaky head, out there. So, dude, it's just watch what you're doing, pay attention, and follow your rotation on your baits. So don't leave that school. Just change techniques on them and different baits, and you'll continue to catch them.
And you said they would be relating to the current at that time. Is there a lot of current in the James River?
Yeah, if they're dropping the lake down, there will be. Yeah.
Okay. Do they pull back inside?
Not like tons. Not like tons where boat control's an issue. It won't be that. It's
right.
Just moving. You need to have moving water. You don't need it flowing backwards. If it's flowing backwards, God, you just go to the bank and hope for the best, because it's
fair enough.
Yeah, it is. That's the deal. I mean, if it's going backwards, they get suspended out there. They'll stay around those current places, but they just get suspended and they get hard as heck to catch.
Right.
Cool. All right, guys, let's wrap this up. We've been on for a couple hours. It's been great conversation. We covered a lot of good stuff, a lot of juice, a lot of good juice out there. Nice recap on the classic. Hopefully that Northern Swing is going to be good to you, and you'll be hitting the 2022 Classic. So if anybody wants to book a guide trip or follow you on social media, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, just send me a message at CC Morgenthaler, either on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll do my best to get back with you as soon as possible. have a website that's having extreme issues right now, which I apologize for, chadmorgenthaler@gmail.com or chadmorgenthaler.com. You can get that to happen. My email is chadmorgenthaler@gmail.com, so you can send me a message through email as well. But yeah, if you're going to be in the Tablerock area, I mean, we're done at the end of July, so I've pretty much got the summer and the fall open. I've got several trips booked, but you know, it's fun, and I want to do anything. It doesn't matter what type of angler you are, you know, or what you want to try to excel at. If I can help you, I'll be glad to do so. I customize my trips to guys who want to just learn more about electronics, or who want to know about how to approach new lakes, or, you know, bait selection and techniques. It doesn't matter. I will customize the trip to whatever your wants and needs are. You know, we have a good time. We're going to go out and have a good time. We're going to learn a lot about it. And the Tablerock's fantastic. You can always usually catch a lot of fish during the day. And, but I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, there's times where you struggle with it as well, but, you know, that's the fishing part. And I certainly appreciate the opportunity you guys give me to get on here and share my experiences, especially I've since the last time I was on here, I've, you know, got in touch with a lot of guys that I haven't heard from in years. So it was really a cool deal. And you know, I hope that everybody enjoys the show as much as I do, because I sure do.
Yeah, man, it's fun. It's fun to hang out and just talk fishing, man. It's
hey,
not,
you know
what? I'll go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to tell you, Chad, congratulations on a tremendous career to this point, and many blessings going forward, man. You make a lot of us proud, and just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it. One of these days, I'm going to show up at Mille. I'm going to knock on your door. I'm going to say, let's go fishing. Let's catch one of these big old brown ones.
Dude, you got a spot in the boat anytime.
Well, make sure you swing by my house. Make sure you swing by my house first and let me get in the truck with you. I missed that place. I
see a little jackpot derby, a little fruit jar deal coming up, Ron, don't you?
I do. I reckon I do.
I got a couple packs of Ned rigs right in the other room. I'm ready to roll. All right, guys, let's shut this down, man. It's been fun. Everybody take care, and maybe we'll do it again some other time. So
sounds great.
All right, guys. Y'all take care.
Okay. Good evening.
Thanks, guys.